Dan Hinatsu, the Fire Information Officer for the Pacific Northwest Team 3. Welcome today to the East Troublesome and Williams Fork Fire briefing. This morning, Dan Quinones, our Incident Commander trainee, will provide some fire updates, followed by our Grand County Sheriff, Brett Shortland, who will provide information on evacuations and reentry process. Also with us today are some special guests. Tom Bobgarten, who is the fire chief for the Hot Sulphur Springs Fire District. Todd, forgive me for butchering your guys' name here. Todd Hotsworth, he's the East Grand Fire Chief. Brad White is the Grand Fire Chief, and Kevin Katzman is the Grand Lake Fire District Fire Chief. Also with us today is Mike Morgan, the Director of the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control, and State Senator Bob Rankin. So the format for today, it'll be Dan, Brett, and then the Senator will have some opportunity to speak to you all, and then we'll follow that with questions and answers. Okay, Dan?
All right, good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Dan Quinones. I'm the Incident Commander Trainee with Pacific Northwest Team Number 3. Good to see the turnout this morning. Thanks for joining us. I want to start off with a little bit of a weather update. With that being said, we had snow levels come into the area over the last week or so, and the levels obviously increased as we move from the west sides of the fire to the east sides of the fire. Up in the Rocky Mountain National Park, we're hearing levels up around 20 inches. And varying levels back across, as we talked about. With that being said, there's been a lot of talk on the levels, the residual effects of the snow and such, and that snow melt is coming off very slow. With that, we have freezing conditions at night, which is hardening back up the snow, and it's allowing it to stay around a little bit longer. We also have an inversion this morning up to about 9,000 feet, so the snow levels may come off a little quicker above that inversion and stay around a little bit longer underneath that inversion. Something else, a word that we might have heard, is called sublimation. Basically the evaporation of that snow melt and how much snow and water do we truly have. The sublimation really does come with the wind, and we haven't seen heavy winds like we saw previous to the snow. We've had very light winds, and we don't expect the winds to pick up to any considerable level until probably Saturday or even later on. So that sublimation is not really coming into effect right now. We have snow-tell sites, and those snow-tell sites really just tell us what the snow water equivalent is. And again, that talk is about how dry the snow is, how wet the snow is, and what the impacts have on it. So the reports that I just got is basically from roughly west to east. We have roughly 0.9 inches to 1.5 inches of water in the snow, if that helps paint the picture for you. Most of that snow, that water will go into the ground, which is a good thing. And I'm speaking in generalities here, and we need to really evaluate as we move forward, but just a little bit of data to help frame up the words that we might have heard and the effects of that snow. Following up, the question we always get, what's the snow going to do to the fire? So you folks were in a drought, 8% on the 1,000-hour fuel moistures. This snow, and even the water equivalent in the snow, is not going to overcome that drought. So it's not season ending, as has been mentioned before, but is season slowing. So our long-term analyst, again, as Noel mentioned, I believe at our last briefing here, they're really working on to see what those products or what products they can provide to help with that near-term, long-term, and as far out as we can see with any sort of confidence, what that's going to do. What's it going to take to dry out, not only to support fire growth, or what it's going to take to actually go into that problem fire spread. So we might see some growth, but when does it become a problem and actually start some concerns? And then also, where do we expect it to occur should that come to fruition? Trying to really find out, or get those things more detailed. And those products are being built. As of 20 minutes ago, I got one thrown on my desk, so information will be coming out as it becomes available. So let's do a little bit of an operational update from there. So the Williams Fork Fire, very quiet, almost silent, which is a great thing. We talked about previously, up in that northern area, that was the last fire heat that we saw on our imagery or from ground resources. We haven't seen anything since we got the snow really in there in full force. The entire fire is in a dormant mode as of right now. We did pull some equipment due to the weather and the snow coming in the terms of water handling equipment, pumps and hose that we had on that southeast portion to protect some values at risk. And just know that equipment didn't get pulled and thrown to the side. It got packaged neatly and was identified for reinsertion should we have any needs for that in the future. Moving on to the East Troublesome, the Grand Zone, and a reminder, the Continental Divide divides us, Grand Zone, from the Thompson Zone, which is being managed by the Cameron Peak Incident Management Team. We're really continuing and focusing on mopping up around those values at risk. So the Highway 34 corridor, looking to see what we can do in the Highway 125 corridor, not only for access, but for any support in there as well. And really, it's how can we safely get in there with this snow? Again, mentioning the freezing and thawing that we have, our operational periods are kind of shrunk for safe access for those firefighters and being able to drive and physically get out of their vehicles and do that work. One thing of note, I believe it was mentioned on the last briefing as well, but up here around Grand Lake, the East Inlet Trail, they are continuing to improve that out. Initially, as far as Lone Pine Lake, physically removing trees and opening up that area for that check line, should the fire in the future decide to make a push down to the south and come back around and continue to protect those values at risk. So it's a really precautionary, really looking ahead for a strategic view of what may happen long after we leave and making sure the fire is set up for success. The reason, in case you're wondering why we're going to stop at Lone Pine Trail, that's really the end of the vegetation and it turns into more scabby components and fuel models. So in essence, it will go all the way to the divide or to the end of the trail from a fire suppression or check line perspective. So keep that in mind. We do continue to support the reentry efforts in the corridors and values at risk that I mentioned earlier, working with the Sheriff's Department, the local municipalities, and the counties. And then our goal is to really look to have containment, as mentioned before, on the map from the west side all the way down to the south and back up, including that check line. That's our goal prior to leaving here. Keeping in mind again that the weather, the snow, the accessibility is slowing us down. Everything's slower when it's 15 below. A little bit warmer today, which is nice. But that is our goal. The north end, we do not continue to look to put folks up in there due to the extensive bug kill, timber, and just the limited movement, if any, that we've had right now and that we see in the immediate future. Although up here, some ranches and then the towns of Rand and Gould, we're not losing sight of those, and we're having communications and really looking to make sure that those are protected as well as we move forward. So, future incident management team organization, Pacific Northwest Team 3, our team that's currently here, our last day is Tuesday because we're on a 14-day cycle. So you're going to be hearing about an incoming incident management team following us, which is normal. That's how we operate. Due to the weather and the operational update that I just gave you, our tenure might be shortened a day or two, but just know that timing is based on the workload and the need of the fire, the resources, and working with our counterparts, our partners and our cooperators while we're here. We're downsizing our staffing for both fires, as you can imagine, with the snow and the weather that we have, but you will have an appropriate incident management organization, a team, and resources commensurate with what's going on in these fires. We're not going to leave them in a spot that's not going to be successful. Incident management teams are rated from type 3 to type 2 to type 1. And following us, we're having discussions on an incident management team, which is at a level 3, following us up. And that workload would mainly be for monitoring, mop up. And then as the snow melts and we have continued drying so we don't make a mess of the ground and the resources that are out there, suppression repair is going to come in. So that's the reason for going to that targeted incident management organization. So I guess I'll just close with just some overall round out. You know, the snow has really parked the fire for the near future, which is a great thing for the community. We love seeing that. We do not anticipate any fire growth that would be of concern for at least several weeks. Talking to our long-term fire behavior analyst, potentially even further out than that. Again, this was not a season-ending event, but a season-slowing event, unless we have weather that comes in and supports the snow and the moisture that we have currently on the ground. And I would liken this to kind of being in an intermission period if we were at a movie. We're taking a pause, we're reorganizing our resources, We're making sure that we have validated the workload, the access, and we're really strategically looking out ahead of what may be coming and informing the group here prior to our departure and setting the fire and the community up for success. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Brett Schrotland, Grand County Sheriff. So I always like to begin with something positive, and so we have some good positives this morning to talk about. The residents on the west side of Highway 34 that have been out of their homes for over a week have been allowed back in there, excluding the impacted areas. So some of these subdivisions that are significantly impacted by the fire, those residents are still out of their homes. However, through the great work of our law, fire, utility partners, we've been able to open up some of these additional areas today. And so you'll see a release that just came out from my office on that. That is great news. It gets people back into those homes, let them check those pipes, let them kind of get back into a little bit of normal life. The second part of that is we do have a significant amount of National Guard soldiers and law enforcement in that west side of Highway 34 as we continue to protect those subdivisions that are impacted. And those partners will remain in those areas for the significant future here, just to make sure that properties are kept safe, people are kept safe, and that visibility is there for any type of looting or other type of criminal acts that go through those areas. And so you will see that visibility. Unfortunately, as people try to work through those subdivisions, there's going to be spots that you can get and that you cannot get. So I ask for people's patience as we move forward with those subdivisions. But another great progress. A couple days ago, we released the east side of 34. Now we're releasing the west side of 34. And as I talked about in a previous press briefing, that we're always looking for successes, and that's one of those. Is that as an incident starts, it starts small. We will really ramp up. And then today, once again, we're ramping down. So less involvement and less significant involvement for different people. Secondly, our damage assessment teams continue to work in the field. Those crews have worked very, very hard, led by the State Office of Emergency Management this week. It's snowy. You have some places that are 12, 16 inches of snow out there. Officers have had to chain up to actually get to some of these residences. It's a slow process moving forward. That process is ongoing. We're currently in about the 250 structure count at this point. That includes primary and outbuildings or secondary structures. So, we talked about 100 a couple days ago. Now we're up in about that 250 range. That number will continue to grow as these teams continue to work through the field. And at the end of this, we obviously will provide updated information as far as what those structure counts are, and then hopefully kind of capturing some data as far as primary and secondary residences, because we do have a lot of both up in that area, and then also the outbuildings as well. So majority of my time today I'd like to take, so as a fire warden in Grand County, as a sheriff, that falls to me. However, I have some incredible professionals that I work with here in Grand County, and those are our local fire chiefs from our 5 fire protection districts. And so these are the boots on the ground. These are the staff that led those incredible efforts all across Grand County in 2020 fire season. Grand County wildfire has really hit all of our fire districts from the west to the east. And these fire departments have been busy. So I stand up here every day doing these talks, but these are really truly the boots on the ground and the leadership that I rely on every day to make decisions for me, to support my office, and then support our community. So my sincere gratitude to each one of them for the incredible work they do. And I want to take a minute and introduce each one of them today, collectively and then individually as a team. So I'm going to start off with whoever's Chief Todd Holsworth right here to my left. Coming up, Chief. Chief Holsworth is the fire chief of the East Grand Fire Protection District that covers the Tabernash, Fraser, and Winter Park areas. Next, I have Chief Tom Baumgarten from the Hot Sulphur Partial Fire Protection District, obviously the Hot Sulphur and Partial areas. I have Chief Brad White from Grand Fire Protection District surrounding the middle part of our county in the Granby area. And then I have Chief Kevin Ratzman. Chief Ratzman is the Grand Lake Fire Protection District. And then on the west side of Grand County, we have the Kremling Fire Protection District that is run by Chief Tony Tucker. Chief Tucker couldn't make it with us today. And last, I have Director Mike Morgan from Division of Fire Prevention and Control, an incredible partner with us that runs the state Division Fire Prevention and Control unit. They have people staffed here locally and then all across the state. An incredible partner with us. So my thanks to all 5 of these leaders, plus Chief Tucker, for their incredible work. I'm happy to allow any of them that wish to speak. But I cannot thank them enough from me and all of our citizens for the great work that each of you do. Volunteer departments, paid departments, long days. Some of these departments worked, 48 hours straight before they were able to actually get some relief out there. And so these are the true heroes, and my thanks to each of you and your staff for the great work you did. So I'll pass this off to anybody that wants to.
Brad, you can lead the charge here. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I think each one of us would be the first to tell you, and we'd be remiss if we didn't point it out, that obviously we just manage agencies. We try to make sure that we've got well-trained firefighters and good equipment in the house to protect our communities, and every one of us has a large team backing us up that's actually doing the work on the ground. Kind of a long, tough fire season in addition to the two big ones we've been talking about since August. There's been, I would like to say endless, but easily another dozen and a half fires in this county that have gotten, over a half acre that crews here worked with federal crews and handled before they grew to this. So tough year, and again, there's about 108 firefighters in this county that are anywhere from paid career to volunteer. There's quite the volunteer group here in the county that we really owe our thanks and gratitude for this season and certainly this last week. So anybody else care to speak?
You got it said.
Good morning, my name is Kevin Ratzman. I'm the Fire Chief of Grand Lake Fire. The biggest thing I want to say is thank you to all of our federal partners, our state partners, everyone who's come in and helped us from the bottom of our hearts. And the community of Grand Lake, we all are considered a family up there, and we really do sincerely appreciate everything you guys have done for us. And it's going to be a long haul from there. We're just going to put our heads down, and we're all going to get through this together. And unfortunately, this is Grand County's little 9/11, and we're going to get through this. This is one of the worst events, if not the worst event that's ever hit this county. And we will get through this together. So again, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Todd Holsworth. We've started our fire season, really kicked up was on the 14th of August when the Williams Fork fire started. And that affected the three districts on the south end here. And it's been sitting out there for the last 2.5 months, and it finally got at least about a month ago, got pretty quiet, fortunately. Emphasize again, we've been working on this for years. I mean, our equipment, our personnel, our training, our just the resources, our boards of we're all special districts, so we have a board of directors that we're responsible to, and then we have our volunteers, our staff. This has been years in the making to be able to do what happened on Wednesday night, because to launch that much equipment, that many people into that firestorm, most of the time, as we were discussing at our debrief, we did our in-house debrief the other night. Most of the time, this would be, a daytime event, maybe, late afternoon. Everybody go back into safety zones, take pictures, and engage the next day. No, in the dark, through the night, our folks were up there, flame licking things. The efforts of our firefighters, officers, just was outstanding. I mean, all the departments working together was mostly the local effort. The ability of getting some additional trucks in, what we call our mutual aid, mountain area mutual aid that came in, additional 5 units there, plus some overhead people to help. It was quite the on-the-fly thing, and listening to the radio traffic. We should have had people hurt. We should have had people worse. We got it with no injuries to firefighters or civilians. There was 2 avoidable deaths, unfortunately, but that's it. And for a fire to go to 100,000 acres overnight through a populated area and basically get out of it with homes damaged or destroyed, and really nobody else hurt or injured except for the 2 that made their decisions, is just unbelievable. It should have been a photo event. We just should have been taking pictures of it. No, the guys fully engaged, the gals, and fully engaged that fire and worked as hard as they could for almost 3 days, really. because the fire didn't give up that morning. It kept going that day and the next day. So, thanks. Your turn, Mike.
So it seems like forever ago that the Dice Hill fire hit over. I don't know if anybody remembers that one or not, but that one seemed to be the momentum pusher, and we all thought, okay, we got the one out of the way with early, everything's going to be good. Nobody really expected this fire season to go like it did. Hot Sulphur Springs is an all-volunteer fire department, so our guys have been working pretty much nonstop since the Dice Hill fire. So the volunteers up here have been given everything that they have, giving up their time from their families and protecting their families at the end of this. So I just can't thank our volunteers enough. They've just given up so much this year, and they'll continue to do so until everything is good to go. So thank you.
Well, thank you. My name is Mike Morgan. I'm the director of the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control in the Department of Public Safety. I think the sheriff hit it on the head, and the chiefs is that, the firefighters, law enforcement, those first responders that got out there, they saved lives, they've saved homes, and did tremendous work against all the odds. To put a little perspective on how fire works in Colorado, the fire chief is responsible for a fire until it exceeds his or her capability. Once that happens, it passes to the sheriff. The sheriff becomes responsible to manage that fire until it exceeds his or her capability, and then at that point, the director of the Division of Fire Prevention and Control assumes that responsibility through Tyler Campbell, our agency administrator that's over there. So it's not me, Tyler, our boots on the ground, but I think that's where the real work gets done. We're trying to keep clearance space so the people have the things that they need. A couple things I think are important to maybe throw into this, to the challenges that were faced by these folks and what we've seen across Colorado over the year. One of the comments that Chief Halsworth made was it grew 108,000 acres overnight. To put that into perspective, the Spring Creek fire in 2018, which had been the second largest fire in Colorado's history, had burned for well over a month. I think it was close to 2 months, had burned about a total of about 108,000 acres in over a month. This happened overnight in October. To again put it into perspective, the largest fire in Colorado's history coming into 2020 was the Hayman fire, which sat in that spot since 2002. So for 18 years, it held the #1 largest fire in Colorado's history. At the end of this fire season, it's sitting at #4. We've had 3 larger fires with the Pine Gulch fire over in Garfield and Mesa County, the Cameron Peak fire, and the East Troublesome fire. So my hat is off to the first responder community that against all odds have done great work. Nobody's been hurt, and I just applaud everybody's efforts. And our job is to support the sheriff and the fire chiefs and our local partners as best we can to help them get through those things. So kudos to them. They deserve all the gratitude. So thank you.
We'll pass it back to you. We'll pass it back to Stan.
Thanks, guys, for the great work. We do have a last-minute addition to the speaker list here. Kate McIntyre, she's the county manager for Grand County. She'll speak to a little bit about the disasters assistance. Kate?
So today is a tough day for a lot of folks, and I just want to make sure for those of you who have lost your homes, you and your families, there are a lot of folks setting up a disaster assistance center where you can go and be supported on a lot of different levels. There will be insurance information, long-term housing options. Really appreciate all of the towns and folks who own homes and second homes who are offering their housing options. If you have housing options to offer, you can get in touch with us at 970-725-3803. And you can let us know if you have long-term housing options available so that those people who are permanent residents have some options to consider. There will also be mental health services offered through the Disaster Assistance Center. And many of you are our friends and our neighbors, so want to make sure that you understand that the state is helping us set up this center. It's going to be located at the Inn at Silver Creek, and it's going to open tomorrow. The weekday hours will be 8 to 6, and the weekend hours will be 9 to 2. So as you start getting back to your properties and you need assistance with anything, please either visit the Disaster Assistance Center in person, or we'll also have a lot of those same resources available online, and you can go to gcemergency.com, and we continue to get resources devoted to helping us set up that center and make sure that you have the support that you need. So again, that phone number is 970-725-3803 if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Senator Rankin?
Thank you, Stan. I am your state senator for the local area, but I also represent a vast part of northwest Colorado, which includes Williams Fork Fire, the Grizzly Creek Fire, and the Pine Creek Fire. So I feel like I have a special responsibility from that to being the senator representing that area as I go back in the next session. And that is to say that I've been here personally and put my boots on the ashes and looked at the damage and talked to the folks in the evacuation center, because I want to go back. I want to go back to the legislature and make them understand what's happened here and what the state, and work on what the state can do to help. And Kate, specifically, you know, I want to be part of getting out the information on how we can help people. So thank you, Northwest Incident Management Team. We're so fortunate. Unfortunately, I've met several incident management teams this summer, but you know, we're so fortunate to have you come and help us. And thanks so much to our fire districts and volunteer folks. You know, in addition to those big fires, you know, so many small fires get put out that could be bigger, and I don't think people really realize that, or at least our legislature. So I want to, and I was able to ride up with Mike Morgan, we're neighbors and director, and so I got a refresher on how it all works management-wise. But I want to do two things as your senator. I want to make sure the state's doing everything we can to help those folks who have been burned out of their homes here in the evacuation center. I'm going to go over there and visit the evacuation center. And, you know, I want to just, I'm sure we're doing a great job. Our state is set up to do this. But if there's anything at all that we can do, that I can do as a legislator, I want to take that back with me. The other thing I want to do, I literally did what's called pulling a bill title. I registered a bill for the next session this morning. And the title of that bill is Wildlife Fire Mitigation, Detection, and Suppression. I don't know what all we need to do to enhance our capability, but you know, I know there's some things. And so I've set up this envelope, and so I want input on what all of you think, you know, we can do to make it better. I don't know if that's funding, it's equipment, it's building up our local fire departments, it's Mike's at the state level. I don't know, but I want to attack that in the legislature this session. And I'll just end with one thing. You know, you're up here in Grand County, you're being treated as heroes. I want you to know that I get this from all over the state. You know, the almost 6 million people in this state are watching what you're all doing here. And you are heroes in the eyes of all of those people. So I just want to communicate that, because you may not understand how grateful the whole state is for what you do to protect these wonderful lands. I mean, you know, I often say people move to Denver and they buy a cowboy hat and a pair of boots, and they all of a sudden they think they're Westerners, you know, they think they live in Grand County or something. But then they get on I-70 and stalled in traffic and reality hits. But this whole state appreciates Western Colorado so much, and they're so grateful for what you all do to protect it. And public service as well, Sheriff. I mean, I understand, you know, that fits right in with our fire people. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you. I'm looking forward to learning today.
Thank you, Senator. Now we'll open it up for questions.
The sheriff had mentioned that there were National Guard and law enforcement in areas west of 34 still. Has there been any looting or issues that have already occurred?
Okay, the question is that we have National Guard in the area providing closure enforcement, and has there been any issues as a result? Sheriff?
Great question, McKenna. That comes pretty often, actually. So there has not. So one of our parts on this is to really make sure we are proactive in that, and that we actually have that visibility and that presence in these burn areas from day one. And so you've saw many of our partner agencies and our local people, and then also the National Guard in those areas. And they're going to continue in that area as people start to enter back into those neighborhoods to keep everything safe. But there has not been any specific incidents. We've had a couple trespassing issues, but no theft.
Sheriff, you mentioned 250, and I just want to clarify, that's 250 structures lost so far in that damage assessment count?
That is correct.
And are the majority of those still in the red, the still impacted area that remains closed, or are they scattered in with the areas that you're reopening to residents today?
So I'm not actually prepared to release that specifically, those areas. But majority of the areas that we were able to release today did not have impacted homes.
One for the incident commander. You spoke about no growth, parking, the fact that this is going to be a downgraded incident. There's still a lot of red on the map. There's still not some people that can't go home. Have we crossed a certain point of where we're out of a dangerous level, or are we nearly out of the woods? What's your message for people in Granby and in Grand Lake, seeing the fact that this fire is still out there, the containment number is where it's at, but yet we're already kind of ramping down a little bit? Yeah, so the question, if I heard you correctly, is kind of how can I frame the fire levels that we're at against the values at risk, and weighing that with the evacuations and the fire suppression efforts. So it's a great question. Like I mentioned, we're at an intermission. So the fire's not done. We haven't received a season-ending event in terms of moisture. So for the near future, and that's what our long-term analysts are looking to project, when does the fire behavior come back to us, if it does, to what level, and then to what level do we need to re-engage and when that is. Right now we have snow on the ground, so you're going to be seeing some smokes pop up near some of those areas, values at risk, Highway 34, so on and so forth. But they're not going to be a threat to anything. But we do need to keep going in there and be diligent with our resources, specifically the engine crews, being able to dig them up, put water on them, make sure that those are not a concern. That's kind of the mode we're in right now. The large fire progression, if that ever does come back, and that's going to be a long way out, and I don't want to guess that, so we're really looking at movement of the fire. When's the fire going to start moving again? And then what is that incident management team and resources going to look at? That's the package that we're going to be handing off prior to leaving, to make sure that when those conditions do come to fruition, that the local agency administrators, the counties, the cooperators, the partners, they all know what those criteria are, and they'll have a package to be able to, or at least a recommended package from us to say, okay, let's turn this on, let's get these resources, let's elevate the incident management team, and then go back into fire suppression mode. But right now, we're not in fire suppression mode. We're in trying to find those hot spots, being diligent in working them, and then we're working closely with the sheriff's department to make sure that we can integrate the community back into their homes. So can people read into that if I live in Grand Lake or Granby, at least for now, I can exhale?
I would say the entire fire has a moment for that intermission and for that pause. We're starting to see some folks. I mean, the sheriff came up to us just before this and finally might have got a few hours of sleep last night. That's a great indicator for us to say that it's a reset mode. We're going to reorganize. We're going to focus on supporting the local area on whatever that needs look like, but it's really not a fire suppression mode right now by any means. It's we're actively trying to find where those hot spots are, see if we can access those with the freezing roads and everything else that we have, and then keep working while we're here. So.
Right, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Natalie Bellwood. I'm from Columbine Lake. I'm trying to find out how many people we have, how many firefighters we have, what the number is dealing with these hot spots. I'm
Okay.
anxious about that.
Dan, could you speak to that? How many firefighters are in the Columbine Lake area?
Or in the national park or wherever they need to be.
Yeah, the national park, we have a question was how many firefighters do we have in certain specific areas? And I'd like to start off with more of a general comment of the accessibility, the freezing roads, the weather conditions we have. We don't have large groups going in. They're more small tactical resources that have the equipment and the people trained and capable for doing that. You know, for example, that East Inlet Trail that I mentioned that's going out this direction, we have a Type 1 hotshot crew going in there to do that work. We have professional fallers that are from Montana that have the boots and the equipment and the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do that project. So total number on the fire, I believe as of last night, was right around 693 total personnel, including our incident management team. And we're going to be gliding down from that. So you're going to be seeing less crews and less engines just based on the workload that I mentioned, and really trying to seek out where we can gain access, where we can, the sheriff mentioned, the snow cover. It covers the damage assessment projects that they're looking to do. It also covers up the smoke until it burns off. So a specific number in a specific area is not going to be up for us to be able to give you a number, but just know that the values at risk along those areas that were heavily impacted that the sheriff mentioned, those are our focus. That's where our resources are going, and that's the work that we're trying to perform for you folks while we're here.
Thank you, Dan. Any other questions? All right, great. Thanks for joining us. This